Hedges are a wonderful use to serve as a divider, or in other cases to serve as a border around an existing space, and in many cases just to soften up the walls and the fences and the house, the exterior of a house, in order to make it blend more seamlessly into the landscape. Part of creating the hedge in this is selecting the right plants. You want plants that when you cut them, you shear them, that they will have all the little dormant growth buds that will sprout out vigorously and create the new level of greenery. Oftentimes, hedging has the effect of rejuvenating the plant. It's kind of like giving it a haircut. So in the case of this nice podocarpus that they've hedged, you can see that there's a darker green foliage right down below, and then where the new growth is coming out, it's a brighter, lighter green. And whoever did it had done a real neat job of it. Nice and straight, cuts all the way down. If you're going to use plants as a border, as a divider, as a hedge, there's many things to consider. You want to think about how big it's going to grow and how the spacing therein is going to eventually fill out. Not in a year or two and not at the planting time, but in 5 years and 10 years when it starts to reach maturity, and then thereafter when it starts to require being cut back. In the following wanderings, we'll show you a number of challenges that are faced by the gardener in their care and maintenance of a hedge over time. Occasionally, when you're hedging a plant, you might have to be forced to chop it back into some bare wood. And depending on the age of the wood, and also the sun and the exposure, and whether it has access to water or not, it might take a long time or a short time for all those sprouts to start to come back and to fill it again, in order to make it a nice green hedge. From time to time, you'll have planted a really nice hedge, and it grows good for 5, 10, maybe even 15 years. Then all of a sudden, one of the plants, maybe the irrigation line wasn't watering it, or gopher came and chewed those roots, and it dies on you. And then you're left with a big old hole. So in that kind of an instance, what are you gonna do? If you plant a new planting, it's for sure gonna be smaller. Sometimes it might be even difficult to find the right match for that hedge, the correct boxwood, the Japanese boxwood or the English boxwood. In that case, you're left with a dilemma. If it was you, what would you do? Oops, dead one. We're here at the gas station with the common gas station plant. This here is Photinia in the rose family. But occasionally, even if you've got a nicely planted, well-maintained hedge, weeds will come in. These are weeds. This is a pittosporum. Little sticky seed, maybe a bird dropped or something, boom, landed up in between, and now it's popped up. You can tell from the foliage is different. Now, you as the maintenance gardener, what are you going to do? Are you going to chop them out, dig them out by the roots? Then I'd be all caught up with the roots of this existing plant. Or in another instance, maybe you just want to cut them like this is the hedge and pretend it's all the same plant. Yew trees are commonly used as hedge plants. In some instances, if the yew trees don't have enough water or enough root space, and they get sheared more often than they'd like, then this might be the result. Here's another pair of yew trees as a foundation planting. They're trimmed and in good shape. This here we're looking at a hedge in the making. This part is all done. Come down to the corner. When you round the corner, here are some new ones that are planted. So when you're planting your hedge, you gotta make sure you get the spacing down, because it's gradually gonna grow up in between and come together. If the plants are a little bit too close, then they're gonna be struggling for space and roots. Whereas they're tended nicely apart, then eventually you come up with a nice contiguous row and row of green. When you're hedging, you gotta pay attention to the plant and see what it's doing. That's where the timing comes in. If you hedge the plant at the right time, shear back, then the flower buds come out, and boom, the whole thing's popped full of beautiful blossoms, just like these. Whereas if you're not paying attention, and you're thinking, well, I just do it every second Tuesday of the month, and I'm on routine, then when all those flower buds are coming out, you won't be able to see them. And they're just about to pop open, full of beautiful pink flowers like the breath of heaven, and you'll be like, and you'll have sheared them all off. And then there's no show. This is a just planted Dodonea hedge that divides one house from the next. Once it gets large and established, it'll take quite a bit of maintenance pruning to make sure it stays within bounds and doesn't get crazy big. If you hedge very regularly, consistently, and aggressively, it's likely you'll be able to keep olive trees really small. Otherwise, if you turn around in 3, 4, 5, 10 years, those olive trees will be 10 feet tall and will have taken over your front yard. If you have a hedge growing under the shade of other trees with the roots all competing, it's likely they'll never develop their foliage and it won't ever grow full as a hedge. Instead, it will be sparse. If you don't want a hedge that's comprised of woody shrubs that grow fast, there are a number of different alternatives you can do, still to keep that partition in between the landscapes. So let's go take a look at a few. In our visions of hedges, oftentimes we like to think about them as rectangles or boxes or round circles. Well, it doesn't always have to be like that. You can apply a more naturalistic look to hedges also. In this case, rock rose from the Mediterranean, combined with the blue blossom, California wild lilacs, ceanothus, blends together into a seamless tapestry, and then the particular way that they hedged it makes it resemble waves washing by the beach. Take a look. It's not always necessary to use a woody shrub, a hedge, as a border plant. In other cases, the soft perennials, herbaceous perennials, will do the job and be less maintenance over time. This here at the tippy corner is some hellebores coming into geraniums and some Japanese anemone. Some plants look best in their natural form, rather than being forced into becoming a hedge or a piece of topiary. This here rhododendron is a good example of that. Here's some azaleas blooming beautifully along a border. And if you had went ahead and hedged it and sheared it, for sure it wouldn't be blooming with such glorious colors. In the last oh so many years, it's been popular around here to start planting a lot of grasses and grass-like plants as part of the ornamental landscape. This can be the African rushes that get huge. It could be a little round juncus that comes up about 2-3 feet or so. And it also includes all species of bamboo, whether the ones that are a little bit more clumping or the ones that start to run out to the sides. They present a special challenge for us in the landscape, especially in the dense, small garden places, because they just get so darn huge and they want to run, they want to spread. So when you use them like you would a hedge plant or as a divider, as a barrier, as something to soften the walls, at some point you got to start to cut them. And when you cut them, they don't always come back as you would like them to. They'll come back in a really sparse, strange fashion, or they'll send up a shoot there or a shoot here. Behind me is an example of a couple of bamboos and lower down some African rushes too. Take a look and think, what would you do? How would you treat this if you were the maintenance gardener in this situation? Here is another example of an African rush that's been hedged and now it's coming back. Gardening, and in this case hedging, is a skill that can only be learned in the field. You can learn the general principles and concepts of hedging through books, through videos, but the actual work itself requires a hands-on practice. When you're hedging, my first go-to is hand tools. This here is a pair of sheep shears. Hers are used for shearing sheep. And they work especially well for little tight corners that might be hard to get into with a larger tool. For most hedges, we'll go back to the old standby, which is a pair of head shears, something like this. The good thing about hand tools is really you are the engine. You, the person, are the engine. So you just got to feed it with some food and some drink and you're good to go. In the field, all you need to keep them in good working condition is a little file, sharpen it up. After, when you're done with all your hedging, take some little bit of oil and oil them up so that they don't get rust. If you're cutting into bare wood, because you haven't been doing your routine maintenance for a while and that wood has gotten a little bit thick, it's nice to have a pair of loppers too. So that might come in handy. For the most part though, the hand shears will do the job. If you have a bigger estate or bigger property, bigger garden that you're working on, for sure it's nice to have some motorized tools, some little internal combustion engines to help you work along, proceed at a nicer pace. We got two models here. As is common in our world today, you could go electric with a little plug-in cord. And these are light, real handy. The only thing is that huge long extension cord, you got to plug it in somewhere. And you're always a little bit worried as you're swinging your blades around, you're going to cut right through that cord. And then you got to go splice. Your other choice for motor powered head shears is something like this. That's gas powered. It's a two-cycle engine, so it's a gas and oil mix that you put in there. These are great little machines. The only thing is they're a little bit heavy on the heavy side, and then they do require their routine maintenance to work good. That's to say, you got to make sure they got good fresh fuel, and check the spark plug, make sure the air filter is clean, and that you take good care of it. If you're a student of the plants and you like gardens, you like landscaping, you like the outdoors, well then the whole world's your classroom. Everywhere you go, there's plants to look at and plants to learn from. I would ask that you live like a wild animal. That would say live fully present and aware of your environment at all times. Much of this is visual, so going around checking out the different plants, how they're growing, and also of course using your nasal senses. Whiffing for a little bit of the scent of a night blooming jasmine, some angel's trumpet, or maybe a Philadelphia. And then of course engaging your other tactile senses. On occasion, if the plant is safe to eat, chewing and trying it. In other cases, actively tactilely working with the plants themselves. And that could be carpentry, woodwork, crafting a canoe, making a bow, making some arrows. They all follow the line of working with plants. The most important aspect of plant work is, of course, the hand-to-hand, human-to-plant engagement that requires hands-on practice. That is a particular style learning, which is kind of video screen format where you're just watching and is not interactive back and forth, will just not suffice. So with that in mind, I hope that you'll have a good time out there, taking hikes, walking around, observing the plants and their patterns, and try to understand the forces and laws in place that allow those patterns to emerge. And those forces, of course, that you have to observe are the ones intrinsic to our survival as people as well. Just the basics, is water, is air, is soil, things like this. So good luck to you in your plant explorations. Thank you very much for watching.